Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of our Lighthouse Fellowship Leadership Podcast, The Leadership Edge, where we aspire to inspire the young generation of young professionals who will rise and be the next generation of leaders. And we also want to reach out to those with a purpose-driven mindset, people who want to learn to grow and people who want to have a passion for being a leader. That's what we are, and that is our purpose in this podcast. And on this first episode, on this subject that we're dealing with, it's going to be on the subject of balance. In my personal opinion, I believe that when every leader starts, I think it should be how they can balance their life and their personal workspace. That will help them set an example and also help them move with a proper flow and a structure towards their teammates, towards their work, and also towards their personal life, all the while growing as a leader. So before we jump straight into this, I'd like to hand it over to Pastor Gregory, seeing if he has any words to say.
Oh, thanks, Samuel. And again, I want to thank you for putting this together, the team. I think it's so important and a very important reason for why we exist and why we're doing this podcast. Because if we really consider the purpose behind it, it contributes to helping the leaders of today understand what are the skills they need to have moving into the future. And so I hope that these sessions will be of great help to the listeners, and it will be a great help to those aspiring to be leaders.
The same thing, and I hope this will reach out to many more people as this launches. So without further ado and without wasting anybody's time, let's jump into the first question of our subject of balance, and that is kind of the name of the episode as well. That is, what does flexing balance actually mean in leadership?
So the reason I came up with that name, flexing balance, I've always been a very passionate leadership, I won't say junkie, but I've always studied leadership and I enjoyed leadership. And so when I was reading an article not long ago, I think this was back in 2024, in a Forbes magazine, an author whose name was Dan Yeager began to share in that article that in 2025, one of the things that is going to become so necessary and needed is to be able to develop certain leadership muscles. And so while reading that article, I came to an awareness where leadership is very much like sports, where in sports you develop certain disciplines, you grow your stamina, but at the same time you have to work on muscles, certain muscle groups. And so what Dan Yeager was basically illustrating, or rather implying in that article, is the need for us to grow these muscle groups, and these muscle groups that are associated to leadership. So leadership has certain muscles that need to be worked on, and therefore I think that's why these sessions are very powerful and important, because many times we are very focused on the traditional education, but life skill can sometimes be treated as unimportant, or it's sidelined. And so being balanced, being time management, being the muscle that we want to consider today, is a life skill that needs to be enhanced, a life skill that needs to be honed and worked on, and it is no doubt a life skill that can be strengthened. And so as good leaders, why flexing balance? Because learning to have proper balance in your personal, your professional, your corporate life matters, because it begins to help you become a better leader.
That's actually quite a burst of knowledge. That's actually quite inspirational. May I know who Dan Yeager exactly is?
So Dan Yeager is an author for Forbes. He's written quite a number of books from what I know. But at the same time, he is also an individual that writes for Sports Illustrated. So hence the idea behind the muscle group and why leadership is linked to muscles. I think it's because of his strength in sports, and he's being an author in that.
Is he commonly associated with sports but also leadership, or is that just like a side thing?
He is a sports writer. He writes a lot about sports, but I've seen a couple of articles by Dan that's linked to even the context of leadership.
Okay. So the other question I'd like to ask is, This one is a little bit of a sidestep in comparison to the subject we're dealing with, which is balance, but I still believe it holds a relative similarity, and I think it's important for us to go over, and that is, how do you create a mentally productive workspace?
Oh, that's interesting.
Uh-huh.
The word you used is mentally productive. I wanna focus on the word mental, because here we are today. There's so much that the culture speaks about: mental state, mental health, wellness in the workspace, and upon further reviewing and studying this matter, I've come to conclude that culture is crucial. In any given workspace, in a church, in any given environment, culture plays a very important part. And let's take it a step further. It's not only in the corporate world, but culture matters even in a family relationship. Culture matters in a marriage. But what develops good culture is open relationships, open communication, right? When you can truly open yourself up to having conversations without the threat of feeling condemned, without the threat of feeling humiliated, without the threat of feeling like, how are they going to judge me? And that open communication comes from trust. But trust is not a given. Trust is developed over time. So I think, Samuel, to give you a little bit of a context to this, years ago, DG Telecommunication, very openly they publicized this idea of having an open workspace environment. So when you walked into their office, they had tables, desk, and chairs everywhere.
That's
in
what
the
you expect
office.
out of an office.
Yeah, but essentially it were no cubicles. No cubicles, no rooms. It was just an open workspace. So immaterial of what position you held, whether you were a director of the company, or you were the CEO of the company, or you were just a general, a middle rank person, or even a higher rank person, whichever category you fell under, an executive, manager, director, whichever category, you worked with everyone on an open floor.
So no one gets special treatment or
It
whatnot.
was for that reason they wanted to make it that way. That everyone in this organization were going to be treated the same way, and everyone would be able to communicate openly, whether it's to their bosses and anyone else. So in order to have that, no doubt the culture had to be shifted. But in order for the culture to shift, they had to develop that trust. So many times when you try to shift the culture without the trust in place, that becomes unhealthy for the environment. So trust is a very important element to having open communication. So if you're going to develop a mentally healthy work environment, culture plays a part. But besides culture, open relationship and open communication with trust plays a very important element.
I think also another one thing I actually wanted to add regarding open communication is, I think it's very important in a work environment to have an established open communication, because that creates less of discord and less of chaos around the work environment. No gossip, no rumors, no one-sided feelings. Nobody is having any ulterior motives, so there's no double-mindedness all around. There's just the establishment of honesty, and there's a building of relationship. And when relationship is built, in my opinion, people feel valued, people feel at peace, and people feel joy at where they work. And there's just a level of mental peace and a level of productivity because they're doing what they love. If you're forced to do something you don't like,
the truth of the matter at the end of the day is, when you're working with humans, you will always have human problems.
of course.
So that's the most important thing. Like I've said it again and again. We must always pay attention to context and not content. So context is more important than content.
Right, of course. So moving on to our main and most important question of this subject matter, it is how do you actually manage work-life balance as a leader with your personal life, then also your life as a leader?
Excellent. So I think let's get into this. I believe that in simplest terms, when it comes to managing work life or managing time, there has to be a prioritization. What really matters to you? What really is important to you? What do you value the most? What you value the most, you prioritize the greatest. All right. So I'll share something with you that helped me develop my structure. First thing first, I don't believe in time management, because time management is only the belief that I've got 24 hours a day and I'm going to manage the time. Actually, the better term or the better word to ascribe or to describe managing it better is your task. Managing your task better is task management. So Stephen Covey, and this is not my theory, but this is something that he's taught and I've applied. He spoke about what is called the 4 quadrants. Stephen Covey said that there are 4 areas in a person's life, and every time you are given a task, you're going to have to decide which quadrant does this task fall under. There's the urgent and the important, which is the first quadrant. Then there's the important task but not urgent, which falls under the second quadrant. Then there's the third quadrant, which is going to be the urgent but not, or rather the second quadrant is important but not urgent. Then the third quadrant is urgent but not important. And then the fourth quadrant is not urgent, not important. So quadrant 2 and quadrant 3 can get a little bit confusing, all right? I'll say it again, okay? Quadrant 2 says important but not urgent. Whereas quadrant 3 says it's very urgent, but it's not important. So every day, you're going to have to determine what is important and what is urgent. Today, what is going to be important for me and what is urgent to me today that I must do. So let me give you a guide. When it comes to urgent and important, you must do it. There are no compromises to this. It must be done. When it comes to the second quadrant, which is going to be something important but it's not urgent, you plan and you schedule it. When can I do this? It's important, but I don't have to do it today. It's not important enough that it takes up my day today. It's important, but it's not urgent. So I plan, I schedule. I've got 7 days this week. I will do this task on Friday at this time to this time, because it's important, but it's not urgent. But what about tasks that seems to be urgent? Very urgent. It needs to be done today, but it's not an important task, right? It's not important. It's urgent, but it's not important. So what do? I delegate that task. I ask someone to handle that for me. Then what about the not urgent and not important tasks? That one I discard. I don't do. So let me recap, yeah? There's the urgent and important, which you do. Then there's the important but not urgent that you plan and you schedule. Then there is the urgent but not important, and that's what you delegate. You ask someone else to handle it, you outsource it, you pay someone to handle it for you, you get it taken care of because it's urgent but it's not important. Then finally, what is not urgent, not important, like maybe scrolling, social media, looking at this, looking at that, details, shopping is not urgent, not important. So what do? You eliminate it and you remove it from it. This is how you would prioritize what matters.
A thought I'd like to add as well is I think setting boundaries and learning to say no is also a step forward in really prioritizing and managing your tasks. It's something a lot of people don't understand, but it's something they need to be aware of, and that is saying no isn't rude. It's setting boundaries, and it's learning to prioritize yourself and your task and trying to manage your life and keep everything balanced as a leader and as a personal person trying to grow. And I also believe that there's going to be for sure like a lot of things in life, a lot of commitments that we definitely have to learn to put down, a lot of things we have to learn to sacrifice if we really want to achieve this flow state of balance in personal life and also personal work life. And also what you said earlier about learning to delegate and really leaving it to someone, I really like more clarity on that, and I'd really like to ask, like, how do you delegate as a leader?
Very good. So I think, again, going back to the second question that you asked earlier, how do you develop a mentally healthy environment, right? Trust. It goes back to trust, right? So as a leader, one of the things we look for is someone that can be trusted. Trust is a very important element to a relationship. When trust is present, they can be delegated. Work can be delegated, right? I think another factor when it comes to delegation, we're talking about delegation, right? Going to quadrant 3, which is delegate. How do we delegate? The second thing that you have to identify is you got to delegate work that is strength oriented. So if I gave someone something to do that they're not strong in that, they don't have the ability to do it. They may have the passion, but they don't have the ability. Then I'm also putting them into trouble while I'm setting the wrong expectations as well. So someone is going to carry out the task, but they're not talented in it, they're not gifted in it, they're not able to do it, and it's not going to go well. So delegation requires knowing the strength of the person you're entrusting to give that task to, right? So I think delegating involves those two elements. It involves the trust element, it involves the knowing element, then it also involves expectations. When you delegate something, expectations are important. What is expected of me and what is expected of the person that you're delegating to, all right? And I think that's important. Then let me just add to this, all right? Giving ownership is crucial. That means when I entrust you with a task, I give you complete ownership because of the trust I have, the strength I know that you have, and essentially the expectations I have set for you. When I know those three components, then what that does is I don't have to just micromanage you, or you don't have to micromanage anyone. You give complete ownership. Why? Because there's trust, there's expectations, and there is the knowledge of the strength that the person possesses.
I think what I wanted more clarity and actually question on is, how do you actually like find trust in any of your teammates? I know trust is a hard thing, and as we've spoken earlier in one of our earlier questions, we have human problems and human things. So I really like to know, how can we really find somebody we can trust and delegate, expecting results without any flaws? Or
There are no doubt there are certain metrics that you measure people by, and I think the simplest way is words. Yes, when someone gives you words, when someone speaks or communicates, do they keep their word? That's one way you can measure someone if they can be trusted. Second is to identify their lifestyle. How has their lifestyle really been? Are they more personality or are they character? Personality, they know how to hype up, they know how to get excited, they know how to really put on a front, it's personality, it's influence is always person, but character is hidden. Who are they when no one is seeing? Who are they when no one watches? Who are they when you are not there? That's character. Character comes out of that. That's how you develop the trust. I think the third thing is that if you're going to learn to trust someone, you have to learn to see beyond the external. You have to learn to judge. You have to learn to evaluate them by who are the people that are around, that surround them. Who are the people that really they spend time with? What are the type of life they aspire? What are their goals? Where do they want to go? These are things that are very crucial in identifying trust. People that I put my trust in, for example, are oftentimes people who are visionaries. People who I don't allow the circumstances in the present to influence the way they think, because they have to see beyond to gain my trust. Like if all you see is the current, then how will I trust you for the future. So it has to be a visionary. So I think that's my qualifiers when I would really want to trust someone.
I think I have actually like a tricky question. So what if this person has the qualities, has the strength, has the talent to really bring this task and really bring it to its fullest, but his character, his personality, and also his word are not consistent?
It comes down to boundaries and limitation. You have to remember that it's not only corporate, but it's individuals, right? So you got two groups of people. You got fixed mindset people, and you've got growth mindset people. So at the end of the day, when there's a person who's fixed minded, they're fixed minded. So Carol, I believe her name was Carol S. Dweck, if I'm not mistaken. She basically made the growth mindset and the fixed mindset well known using science. You begin to explain it. And I come to conclude that there are two groups of people. It's either growth or fixed. So at the end of the day, when someone can deliver in one area, but the expectation from the organization is for them to deliver in other areas as well, then they limit their ability to grow. The one that has lost is not the corporation generally or the organization, it's more so of the person itself. Because at the end of the day, you have to decide, am I a prop or am I an instrument? Some companies will keep you because it makes the company look good. You're a prop, but they won't depend on you. They won't rely on you because you're not an instrument. But some companies will say you're an instrument and you will go far, and so I'll develop you, I'll help you grow. So it's something that we should learn to trust the headship or the leadership of the organization to measure that in place. Yeah.
Honestly, that was quite a lot of wise words, a lot of thoughts, a lot of insights, and I think we're getting around to the end. So before we end things, I'd like us both to have a takeaway on this, and what is one practical step listeners can take this week to lead with a better balance, your whole takeaway, so that our audience doesn't get too overwhelmed with all that they've learned today. Let's start with you, Pastor.
I think, okay, so let me just leave you with a couple of time management tools that I think is necessary for our audience and also for us, even as aspiring leaders, to develop and put in place. And so there are, this is what I apply. I think you're gonna have to learn, one of the skills you can learn even as a leader is time blocking. These are methods, these are strategies. What time blocking is basically you block a chunk out of your day without breaking down exactly what you need to do. But you know what? From 9 to 12 p.m., I am going to be focused on work related to whatever. So it might be related to my business, work related to my ministry, work related to my development, right? So you're blocking time away every day for that purpose, and you complete whatever. Then there's also the Pomodoro technique. Yes, and what that is that you set a timer on yourself. Whenever you get to a certain task, you begin to set a 25-minute timer. And so in that 25 minutes, you're not going to be distracted. You're going to complete whatever you set your mind to do in that 25 minutes. So perhaps these are just some tools that can be done. And then there's also teaming your task. That means every day you are teaming the task that you carry out. This is another important tool that you can apply, because teaming your task is what a lot of high-level leaders do. They team their tasks. So for me personally, Fridays are days where I do a lot of administrative work. I team the task on that day. Tuesdays, Wednesdays are development days. They are days when I do things that develop either programs, work on certain messages, certain sermons. I'm developing something. I team those days to be those particular tasks. So what it does is it gives me the power to do other work during the other periods of time that I have available. So, as a takeaway, I think go study these tools, these strategies that are available. And I think if there was one thing I would leave with the audience, with the team today, is that we need to learn to prioritize better. And how do we learn that? I think go and read up about Stephen Covey, the 4 quadrants. And as you begin to understand that better, you will learn to understand what are my priorities, what's important, what's urgent, what's not important but urgent, what's not urgent but important, what's not important, what's not urgent. Identify your priorities, and I think that will help you lead better.
So my personal takeaway on this entire episode of Balance is learning to prioritize yourself. Now, before I create any misunderstandings, I'd like to clarify personally as a believer, I put myself under God. God comes above me and will always be above me. But personally, as a leader and as a person who's managing your own personal life, God has given you the brains, the hands and the skills to do what you can with the knowledge that He's blessed you with. So I will say personally, like in your personal work life and in your personal life, set boundaries and let them know, like, this I can do, this I can do. And that also establishes healthy relationships, and that also just helps you overall grow and really keep your life in proper balance and flow state. And that's practically all that I have for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching and reaching out to us. We have our episode on Spotify as well. You can go ahead and search up our church, and please take note on next month, our next episode, a sneak peek. It will be about ownership, so stay tuned. We'll come back to you soon, and that should be everything. Thank you.